But we've had this since the early 50s. This access to total free energy for all. And we've been sitting on it all this time. Why? But that happened on the body cam video. And then within the hour, this 911 call was made. Welcome to the Woo There It Is podcast, the podcast about all things paranormal, strange, and weird. Clayton Morris asks him, could you elaborate, what is really the Cabal? And this is where he goes all out wacky. Morris is letting him say whatever he wants to say. And I'm not saying that any of this is lies or not true, but it's all crazy. I am saying that. But he just doubles down. He says the Cabal are this global family, and they're all part of specific bloodlines. They've descended from specific bloodlines, and they've been around. They've been in charge of the whole world since the Babylonian Empire. He's saying all of this. It's insane. And the way that they've been able to control humanity is by lending money. They've had a lot of money, and so they've been able to lend it and control things that way. And one other clue that tipped him off that the Cabal is in control of everything was this incident where apparently there's something called FISC and FISA. They're they were supposed to be two top secret government programs. And at some point, the New York Times just let it all out. The New York Times told everybody about FISC and FISA, let them all know. And D'Souza said that the president at the time, who was George Bush Sr., was furious about it, and he told them that he was going to prosecute them for this. But D'Souza said that ultimately nothing happened. The New York Times just totally got away with it. And ever since then, D'Souza has believed that the New York Times is essentially protected by the Cabal, which has authority greater than the President of the United States. I mean, this guy is just letting it all hang out. He's not pulling any punches. And then he doubles down. Okay, so if you thought that was crazy, he said, so Clayton Morris asks D'Souza, why did you end up leaving the FBI? He left in 2013. And D'Souza said it's because there was an individual known as Renegade. Known by who? The FBI? They called him Renegade. And this individual was also known to be a hater of America. And the Cabal was able to use their influence and get him elected president. So Renegade, he's claiming, is Obama, Barack Obama. This hater of America who's in cahoots with the Cabal. I didn't say it, he did. Then he says that Obama ended up putting James Comey as head of the FBI. And he says a bunch of negative things about Comey. I'm sure they're all true. I didn't want to get into it. But because of that, D'Souza says, he's telling his buds, this is bad. We can't work for Comey. He can't run the FBI. And so then Comey hears about that, and he wants to run D'Souza out. And ultimately, that's what happens. D'Souza ends up leaving the FBI. That's the story he tells. He actually says that this is all in a documentary that's been released. I'll link to it in the show notes. I haven't seen it yet. So D'Souza thinks that one of the next plans of the Cabal, in addition to a fake alien invasion, is a polycrisis. He even points out that the title of the theme for Davos this year that Klaus Schwab came up with was 2023, the year of polycrisis. And the way that that's said is almost like, oh, how romantic, polycrisis. And polycrisis, what it means is just like every crises of varying nature. So a financial, health crisis, military, all these different types of crises all happening at the same time. That's what polycrisis is. the last part that I'm going to say about D'Souza is you're probably wondering, why doesn't he get shot down by the Cabal or the FBI? And I'm still kind of wondering that. It kind of makes me wonder if he's sort of a disinformation agent. You can never be too sure. But he says that the reason is that when he tries to clear stuff that he wants, like books that he wants to publish with the FBI, they see that it's paranormal. Whoever's clearing it sees that it's paranormal in nature. And so they immediately don't take it seriously and they clear it. And they're like, yeah, you're no threat to us. So maybe that's true, but I would listen to it with a grain of salt. So that interview came out March the 19th. And then on May 19th, Kim Iverson, who I would also think of as a very well-pedigreed journalist, she's actually somewhat well known for having been written off as a conspiracy theorist and then basically through the test of time being proven correct about many of her reports, which they tried to label as conspiracy theories. So I have a lot of respect for her, but I was still stunned that she decided to have Dr. Stephen Greer on her show. And Dr. Stephen Greer, he was a medical doctor, but then he decided to focus all of his time on something he calls the Disclosure Project. And this project, essentially, it seeks to disclose classified UFO information. And he's actually made a few documentaries. One of them is called Unacknowledged, and the other one is called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And they're both really good. And interestingly, this is kind of an aside, he doesn't talk about this in his interview with her, but he has a whole program. I've never done it, so I'm not sure of the exact details. But I think essentially it is this program to call in a UFO, to basically summon one with your mind, which sounds insane, but I totally buy it. But yeah, I think you have to do it in a group of people or something. And a lot of people have had some pretty crazy UFO encounters that way. But that's an aside. So Greer believes that there is an organization that is essentially sitting on information about an alternative energy source that would essentially be free energy for all. And this is the energy that underlies the anti-gravity technology that essentially allows UFOs to fly the insane way that they do, that seems to defy the laws of physics. And I got the impression, I can't really tell, but I get the impression from the interview that he has this technology, like he has access to it from all the whistleblowers that have come to him. And so he says that he has access to free energy and then also access to the data that helps the propulsion systems for these UFOs. And free energy, he could give that to us all now. And he's waiting on it he gives some reasons, but I didn't think they were that valid. I'm like, just publish this now. Put it anywhere and everywhere so that we can start using free energy. But he claims that on June the 12th, 2023, he was going to have a meeting at the National Press Club. And he was going to be accompanied with 5 whistleblowers who were going to provide proof of some pretty crazy stuff, that we have access to this anti-gravity technology, and proof that the technology is being controlled not by any government, but outside of the law. So Congress, the Senate, the president, nobody has control of this technology. No, it's some group outside of the US government. And he doesn't say it, but this sounds a lot like what D'Souza was saying, in which case it's the Cabal once again. And he says that they've been working with these big companies like Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, and Lockheed to make these aircraft. So then Kim Iverson asks Greer when we were first able to get our hands on this technology. And Greer tells her something that I've heard before, and I always kind of wonder about it. But essentially, it's this idea that when we dropped the atomic bombs in the 40s, it sent out essentially a signal to all the creatures of the universe that something f***ed up is going on with humanity. And so they all these UFOs came to kind of check in on us and see what they could do about what was going on. So all these UFOs were flying around and there's nothing we could do about them. And somebody crafty realized that we could scramble their navigation systems. And so that's how a UFO crashed, because we were able to scramble their navigation systems. They couldn't navigate and they crashed. That's what he claims happened at Roswell. And so once we had downed craft at Roswell, we were able to back engineer that and ultimately figure out anti-gravity technology, although it took a few years. But we've had this since the early 50s. This access to total free energy for all. And we've been sitting on it all this time. Why? Because if we give free energy to all, then the oil companies don't continue to get to make all that money that they're making. And so a lot of money has exchanged hands, and there's a vested interest in keeping this information secret. I've spoken only very briefly about cattle mutilations here. That's this phenomena where people will find their cattle, literally they're mutilated, but they're mutilated in a very surgical manner. It's like almost laser precision has been used, and their blood is completely gone, and it's strange items are missing from their bodies. It's a very odd thing. And he claims that that has nothing to do with actual alien UFOs. That is either the Cabal working their own UFOs or the US government is unclear. But that's what he claims is going on. He also claims that the alien abductions that happened, again, are being done, the ones where they torture people and throw probes up, those are also being done by governments or the Cabal. It's unclear which. But the crazy coincidence is that Greer literally says the same thing D'Souza says, that the plan of this organization that is operating outside of the law, outside of any oversight from any government, their plan is to have a fake alien invasion. And through this, they'll be able to scare us into allowing them to control us in all sorts of ways. And this interview happened in May. So then on June the 5th, that's when this whistleblower comes forth, and he has some sort of military background. They listed all his credentials. He's apparently highly credentialed. And he was part of this task force that was assigned to study the UAP phenomenon. And he claims that while he was studying this phenomenon, people started coming out of the woodwork and telling him of this other program that was going on that he had no access to. Now, he's supposed to have access to anything dealing with UAPs, but this other program, he had no access to. And what was this other program doing? Well, they were assigned, he claims, to recovering crashed UFOs. He says vehicles of non-human origin, but it's crashed UFOs. And the journalist asked him, were there aliens found on these crashed UFOs? And the way that he answers this is so roundabout. I mean, I encourage you, I have a link in the show notes. I definitely encourage you, if you're interested, to check out his interview, because the way he says it is so roundabout that it definitely makes me sort of question a little bit what's going on with him. But in a later interview, I think this was literally published the next day, the journalist asks him if these UAPs are malevolent in intent, if they might harm human beings. And he says, have there been cases where they've hurt human beings? And that's when the man says yes. And this is very interesting because this fits right in line with what D'Souza said, followed by Greer, that the government's going to come out, or not the government, or this group, whatever group this is going to come out and try to make it seem like we are being attacked by aliens. This kind of seems like step one of that plan. Then, that was June the 5th. And then on June the 7th, this insane story comes out. And this is the last bit that I'll talk about. In Las Vegas, there was a policeman, and he's standing there with his body cam, and he's interviewing some people, but you can see in the background, the body cam seems to capture what looks like kind of a shooting star or maybe a meteor that's crashing down to Earth. It's fairly sizable. And it looks green in the video, but one of the streetlights that's in the foreground also looks green. So I think that's just the body cam camera. So I don't really know what actual color it is. But that happened on the body cam video. And then within the hour, apparently, this 911 call was made. Let's take a listen.
There's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one's inside, and it has big eyes and looking at us, and it's still there.
Okay, where is this on your property?
In my backyard. I swear to God, this is not a joke. This is actually, we're terrified of it.
So there's 2 people or 2 subjects that are in your backyard?
Correct, and they're very large. They're like 8 foot, 9 feet, 10 foot. I don't know. They look like aliens to us. Big eyes. They have big eyes, like I can't explain it. And big mouth. They're shiny eyes, and they're not human. They're 100% they're not human.
Okay.
And that's it. That's all that was on the news report that I saw. What I love is the 911 operators. Okay, at the end of all this, because I 100% believe in UFOs. But if somebody called me saying all of that, I would definitely think I was being pranked. So if she's skeptical, I kind of understand. But she sends cops out there and they check everything out. But what's strange is that this family, I don't know, it seemed to be about 4 people. It seemed like they were all standing in the living room looking at aliens in their backyard. And then after that, I don't know what happened. Like, based on this report, this news report, they don't say anything about what happened after that. I mean, it's 4 people. I suspect one of them had a phone. Were there any pictures? Was there any video? And they're not clear about that either. But shouldn't the news reporters be interested in that? Like, isn't that question number 1? Do you have a picture? Do you have video of 8 foot, 9 foot, 10 foot tall aliens in your backyard? Oh no, I didn't think it would be interesting, so I didn't take any video of it. Oh no, I didn't want to take video because I thought that one of them was having a bad hair day. Who would not take video of that? I think anybody and everybody would do that. That's just a natural reaction. And then what happened to end the event with the aliens? Did they just fly away? Did they disappear? I mean, what happened? And even though this was reported on June the 7th, this happened April the 30th. So they've had a whole month to interview anyone in this family about it. At any rate, something strange is definitely going on. I'm not sure what, but I'm definitely up for it. With that, I'm pretty much done with today's podcast. By the way, if any of you have any interesting stories that you want to tell, any comments, any suggestions, I actually have a link in the show notes to my website where you can click SpeakPipe. You can record a message. You can say, or you can email me at woothereitispodcast@gmail.com. And I've got a link to that also in the show notes. But that is it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you next time.